So some good news for the forces of the greater good today. Let's talk about this snazzy new tower reveal, starting off 2024 with some new miniatures. Hello and welcome back to Warspets Tactics and a very happy new year to all you guys watching. It seems that Games Workshop's getting 2024 off on the right foot with a new 40k reveal right from the first day, and that reveal is none other than this Tau Ethereal miniature, a new alternative miniature sculpt for their shadowy leader cast, and it's going to be done as a store anniversary miniature though, so it might not be the easiest for a lot of people to get their hands on. Let's talk briefly through a few details of the sculpt, compare him to a few other Ethereals and talk about his in-game rules, and look at the Sigmar option, the other teasers that we've had for the Tau, and the previous store anniversary miniatures. The ethereal miniature that Games Workshop have announced is one that's been called the Invocation of the Elements, basically an alternative sculpt for a Tau ethereal that isn't mounted on a hover drone and isn't a named character, and this one's going to be the store anniversary miniature that Games Workshop like to make one of each year, it would seem. Before now we've had things like a Necron Cryptek, a Space Marine Lieutenant, an Inquisitor, and the Leagues of Votan Karl. It seems that in 2024 it's the Tau's turn to get their go for this, and the general idea is that you actually have to go or order from a physical Warhammer store somewhere around the world. They say in this article that this year it's a 9-day window around the store's anniversary where you can check in and order that model from them. They might have some in stock, but I believe that you'd be able to order them in within that window and get them to you. It's not really the most helpful system in the world for people that don't have a local Warhammer store. They're really quite thin on the ground in some countries, or you might just live too far away from a massive city that has one. And that often is just a little bit annoying for people that see a nice miniature like this that they might really want, but aren't able to pick it up directly from the source. It might mean that if you desperately want to get your hands on this guy, it'd probably be paying prices for people reselling them, and that usually comes at a big premium, unfortunately. Otherwise, I suspect that this will be priced at the similar sort of level of Games Workshop's other character miniatures, probably around £27, 35 euros or 45 US dollars. It could be a little bit less if Games Workshop decides they're feeling generous. As well as the Tower miniature, there's also an Age of Sigmar Fireslayer dwarf as another option if you prefer the fantasy setting. Focusing on the new Xenos goodness though, the Ethereals are basically the Tau spiritual leaders, a shadowy supercast that unite the other casts as one, forging the Tau from their fractures, starting a history into a dynamic empire that's set on conquering the stars. Though the level of control they have over their kin is kind of creepy. They do have a rather unsettling amount of power within Tau society, and aims and goals that might not be entirely clear, though they're not really competent in their own right to any great level. They often serve on the battlefield, leading by inspiration and example. Tau forces nearby fighting incredibly fervently to protect their leaders, and the death of an Ethereal can provide a massive psychological blow to a Tau force if one is slain or assassinated. This mini is really quite a different take on the theme, perhaps slightly harking back to some Ethereals that we've had in days past. There's some long flowing robes, a rather curious looking staff and honour blade that looks like it's inset with some stylized symbols representing the other Tau casts. They've got some hoofed feet perched atop a shattered Imperial Aquila, some fairly cool flowing stylized robes, and they're holding aloft a little container. I think they call it a jar in the Warhammer community article that seems to be overflowing with incense representing one of the different Tau casts. As mentioned, is on foot or on hoof, I suppose, not on a hover drone, so that would mean that they'd move a little bit less fast if you weren't using the rules for that in game. And this one's painted up in the sept colour of Viola. Kind of interestingly looking a little bit Farsighty there, but of course the Farsight enclaves don't use Ethereals. It seems very likely that this new miniature won't have full rules for Warhammer 40k as a new entry in the codex or anything like that. The way that they do these store anniversary models generally just tends to have them sub in for already existing miniatures in the range. I don't really think that an Ethereal would necessarily need new rules rewriting for this miniature. Sometimes they do get Legends datasheets though. I believe that the Leagues of Votan guy had some, seeing as he had a slightly different plasma weapon compared with the rest, so I guess it's not impossible we might get some Legends rules for this one as well. Perhaps the most fun detail for this one is the way that you can swap out that little incense container for 4 different options, one to represent fire, earth, water or air, really going down the elemental theme for the Ethereal. It almost feels like it might have been slightly designed with the 9th edition rules for the Ethereal in mind. In that edition they could do one of the different invocations of the elements each turn, presumably rousing speeches and war cries to inspire some great deeds for the greater good, whether it's moving swift as the wind or digging in on the defensive with the sense of stone. He does feel like he's a miniature of a very different flavour compared with some of the previous Tower Ethereals. A bit more of a dynamic pose. I feel like a lot of the rest of them are maybe a little bit more muted. He perhaps feels like he's stylistically most similar to the one on the right, perhaps an old metal or fine cast one from a while back. Most town collectors I think will be well familiar with the second one in the lineup. That's the one that's come in the combat patrol for a while and gets around on that hover drone. Currently in game, I think Ethereals are perhaps usable enough, but perhaps not really auto-include for Tau armies. They're 50 points to stick into a Fire Warrior squad, or even just run completely solo, guarding a home objective or something. They allow you to generate command points on a 4+ each command phase, so might average you something like 2 or 3 over the course of a game. And otherwise, the main thing that they bring is a slightly better leadership and a 5+ feel no pain for the unit that they're leading, which would make a Fire Warrior or Breacher squad at least a little bit tougher. Feels like a unit that, unless you're playing Farside Enclaves, is really going to be a terrible thing to have one of given the command point generation, but seems by no means mandatory. If you've got Breachers moving towards midfield objectives, then Fireblades seem a lot more popular, perhaps partly because you can't do the command point generation thing if they're embarked within a transport, never mind the damage boost and things. Overall, though, seems like it could be shaping up to be a good year for the Tau Empire. We already know that there's some Kroot goodness coming. This Kroot gun seen on the left, and then the cavalry miniature that was revealed on the right. Their codex is due out in spring, so really not that far away at the moment. I'm sure we'll be seeing some good mercenary goodness then. Otherwise, for the miniatures, here's the Sigmar option, Brachy of the Gilded Key, a Dwarf Fire Slayer. Quite a fun miniature as well, I think. I do quite like that key inset axe that he's got. Bonus points for the axe being on fire as well, of course. And then these are the previous store anniversary miniatures that we've had over the past few years. A Space Marine Sergeant, a different flavoured Necron Cryptek, Inquisitor Erasmus I think it was, and then an alternative sculpt for Leagues of Votan Carl. I think all of these are quite fun. I guess it's a reasonable enough excuse for Games Workshop to release a few other fun character miniatures. Maybe a bit of a shame for the factions that get them though, that they don't tend to stick around. A few of these I think would have been really quite nice to have stayed just as different aesthetic options for factions that maybe don't see as many releases of the Space Marines. I feel like this new Ethereal would have been quite a nice permanent addition to the range if they felt like doing that. Let me know your thoughts on the miniature though, and whether or not you'd be tempted to try and get your hands on one of these if you had a Warhammer store nearby, or buying one second hand. How good do you think that the sculpt is? Feel free to subscribe to Allspecs Tactics if you'd like to see more like this. I do generally post new 40k videos just about every day, so check back if you'd like to see more like this. And finally, if you have been enjoying all the videos on the channel and would like to help support to keep them coming, I'd just like to mention that the channel does have a Patreon page as well, and you can find that linked in the video description below. Channel patrons do get a fair few advantages, seeing certain videos early, regular votes to see what sort of things happen next on the channel, and automatic entry into the regular prize giveaways with the chance to win some big model kits each month. If any of that sounds good to you, or you'd just like to help support, the link is down in the video description. In any case, a massive thank you for listening, and I'll hope to see you guys next time.